You are listening to the Oneofus.net podcast network. It's Digital Noise, bringing the blues to you in your home for your view. Well, not your view, your listen. It's put it in your ear holes. Shove it in there. Stab it down there with a Q-tip.
You know, I've never been entirely okay with ear holes. It just sounds
a
little vulgar.
It is a little vulgar. It's true. Not as vulgar as asshat, which is still, I think, the greatest insult of all time.
I prefer asshat.
Yeah?
I'm far more okay with asshat.
Because you can't even picture that one. You're just like, it's just so absurd. You're like, what would that be exactly?
I don't know. I think Rick and Morty, you just cut off the butt cheeks and
wear
put
it
them
as a
on top
hat?
as a hat.
Yeah, see, but that's hard to actually...
Yeah, it's hard to do.
So I'm a cut-off ass that someone wears as a hat?
And admittedly, this may mean that I'm a sociopath. That is entirely possible.
That could happen. It could happen. It seems unlikely, but it could happen. What is likely is that Aaron and I, welcome Aaron, is
nice to be here.
The new digital noiser is we're going to be reviewing some of the new Blu-rays and DVDs that have been coming out over the last month. And we have a nice little stack here. It's not huge, but it's reasonable, and there's a good mix of different types of titles here.
Yeah, there was. So when I told my family I was doing this, because I visited them over the weekend, I let them know, like, hey, I'm going to have to watch a bunch of movies, so I'm visiting you guys. And there were some that I was like, yes, we can watch this together.
Yeah.
And there were some that, no, I'm going to wait till nighttime to watch this. You don't need to see it.
Yeah. And I think we're going to start off with one of the ones that you could, in fact, watch together. But before I get into that, let me just tell you guys, we survive at Oneofus.net and Digital Noise specifically by your help. And one of the ways you can do that is if you go to the actual Oneofus.net page for this show or any Digital Noise show, you'll see a bunch of images of the covers of all the movies that we're talking about that particular week. And if you click on one of those, it'll bring you to an Amazon.com page where you can buy that title. And if you do that, we get a nice little kickback. But let's say you get on it, thinking about it, go, I don't know if I want to buy that title. And then you start surfing around on Amazon. You're like, maybe I'll check out my wish list and buy something from my wish list. You know, as long as you started, you got to Amazon.com through one of our links, we get a kickback no matter what you buy.
It's true. I actually bought a little playset for my son, which might as well have been a new car for how expensive it was. And thought of that as I was doing it, and
awesome.
I was like, no, I need to go click on one of their links.
Yeah, I actually replaced my own Amazon.com bookmark link with one that is a bookmark that starts with a one of us thing. So I'm like, oh no, yeah. If I forget, it'll just automatically. That's my default Amazon link. It will start with whatever I get a kickback from. So yes, do that. Also, becoming a subscriber is the number one way you can help. We could certainly use your help there. There's 4 different tiers. I mean, come on. The lowest is $2 a month. If you're listening to this stuff, you can afford $2 a month. You won't even notice it's gone. I mean, that's not even the price of a single beer, for God's sakes. It's not even the price of a single beer you buy in a 6-pack of good quality. You know? So, yes, become a subscriber. Number one way you can help. You get lots of bonus material, always adding new stuff there, more stuff on the way. So thank you so much. And with no further ado, let's get on with the reviews. And as I said, the first one I suspect is one that you could have indeed watched with your family, although I'm not sure that you did.
I did.
Okay. That is Going in Style. This is a remake of an older film from 1979 that I actually never saw. I was meant to get around to because I was a weird kid. I was a huge fan of George Burns, and he was in that movie along with Art Carney, Lee Strasberg, and Charles Hallahan, which is basically a bunch of retirees who decide that they are going to rob a casino. Now, this updates the storyline in some ways. It's a lot less apparently cynical than that movie was. This is a little more lighthearted than that one. I mean, it's kind of like, it almost makes it like the problems with being old. It kind of feels like there's a wah-wah anytime there's something like that. Oh, my back! You know, that wasn't so much of the original, but here you get replacing those characters. Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, and Alan Arkin.
And directed by Zach Braff.
Weird.
Which I did not know that at all until the movie actually started.
It was a very, like, even when it's done, you're like, why did Zach Braff direct this film?
Yeah. I mean,
it just doesn't seem to fit his MO at all.
Not with the characters, not with the style. I mean, so it was cute. Like I said, I watched with my parents. We had a great time going through the movie. It was what I like to call harmless entertainment, where it's not going to be the best movie you see every year, but you can always put it on and sit back and have a good time just enjoying it.
And you have a little bit of a different take than I do, probably, because you are thinking of it along those lines of like, this is that harmless film. I can watch with my family. I watch it and I go, wow, there really wasn't a lot of imagination here. And honestly, just not a hell of a lot of effort. Morgan Freeman really looks like he's about to fall asleep at pretty much every scene in the movie. And from what I hear, that is they have someone on Morgan Freeman sets whose whole job is just to know the right way to wake him up when it's time for him to do something.
That doesn't surprise me in any way.
Yeah.
At all. And no, you're right. The movie doesn't really try anything. It was passable. Although I will say there's a sequence in the middle where they try to rob a Safeway that goes hilariously wrong. That I'll admit flat out, I was laughing out loud.
No,
that segment
was a high point of the film. There were definitely, it's not like there's anything you can point at and go, oh, this is bad, because it's not bad.
It just is.
It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
You know, it's a movie if you're like, you're at your grandparents' house and they're like, why don't you watch movies? Why don't you put something in? I don't know why your grandmother's Katharine Hepburn, but, or some weird, like had a stroke Katharine Hepburn. And this is probably that movie. The three of these guys, they're witness to a robbery, and they're kind of like, the robbers are, they have kind of grudging respect for them because they've just been shit on by this bank that this guy's been using his whole life. And they all found out their pension has been stolen by their company. And they're kind of like, I think we could do this. We could rob a bank. So most of the movie is them putting together this plan to rob this bank.
The same bank, by the way.
The same bank and going on with it. And, you know, of course they disguise themselves as the Rat Pack because that's what you do. But along the way, you get some funny little appearances. Joey King, who is quickly for a young, star on the rise, appearing in lots of stuff, plays, Michael Caine's granddaughter, who we see in here a decent amount. Matt Dillon is kind of just here to take a paycheck as the FBI agent investigating their case incompetently. Wonderful to see Anne Margaret, who is the love interest for Alan Arkin, who used to be like one of the ladies of Hollywood, and she's still pretty hot in her 70s.
You know, she was, definitely. My dad kind of did a little whistle at her when she came on screen.
Christopher Lloyd plays like a very senile guy who kind of hangs out in the same circles they do, which is always kind of sad.
So I admit, like, that it hurt because I love Christopher Lloyd, and I wanted him to do more with that than just be a one-note joke the whole movie.
No, you're right, and that is all they use. And a lot of these side characters are pretty much there. They have one purpose. They're here for one thing, and that's all they're going to get to do. Yeah. There's not going to be any character development or anything like that. And sure, he's the guy who's there to be like, oh, I don't know what's happening. I think it's other things. If you want to see a recent, really good Christopher Lloyd movie, watch I Am Not a Serial Killer, which came out in 2016. It's a really good Christopher Lloyd movie. Kenan Thompson is in this as the rather funny manager of the grocery store they try to rob. And then Peter Serafinowicz, who is playing the Tick right now, has a very funny role playing one of their sons-in-law who is like ex-son-in-law, basically, who's kind of dumb.
So as far as in the movie, everyone has their life is sad plot line. You know, they either have a disease that's going to kill them, they're losing their house, or they are alone and miserable. But my favorite plot out of all of that was actually his plot line. Finding the pothead loser dad and then having him not necessarily not be a pothead anymore, but actually care about his family's life. Like, that was the one where I wanted to see some payoff, and I was glad I got it.
Yeah, I agree. That was probably the only one that was really very interesting. Even the Alan Arkin and Margaret one, which you thought would be more fun, they just kind of end up sleeping together, and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't much of a chase.
Yeah, pretty much.
A lot
he just said okay.
Yeah. I mean, this is passable entertainment. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing that really makes it worth seeking out, like I said, unless, like, the grandparents are coming to town. Yeah. There's a commentary with director Zach Braff, who apparently is a huge fan of the original film, as one of the reasons he wanted to do this, and was pushing to get a re-release of it, but no re-release apparently is on the way. There's 11 deleted scenes, and then just, of course, trailers for other movies. So it is what it is. Let's move on to the next one, which is not for the whole family. This is a very dysfunctional family movie called The Dinner, written by Oren Moverman, who's done a lot of stuff I really, really liked before. As a screenwriter, he wrote The Messenger and Rampart and Love and Mercy. He directed Rampart and The Messenger. I mean, he's like one of those guys. He's a really interesting guy who takes unusual projects.
So I'm kind of curious to hear what you thought about this, because I'll be honest, I did not like it at all.
It's almost impossible to, like, I mean, this film is kind of impenetrable. You know? I mean, even the character who's probably the most sympathetic in this, Richard Gere, is not really all that sympathetic.
No, he's just not a dick.
Yeah, he's he's almost not a dick. Yeah. This is actually a film adaptation of a novel, the third version adaptation of this novel, and it stars Richard Gere, as I said, Steve Coogan, Laura Linney, and Rebecca Hall, Chloe Sevigny, Charlie Plummer, Adepero Odi. And there's some interesting stuff that happens here, but you just can't care because they're all so nasty, horrible people. And when you realize, like, there's all these, all right, so let me just say what the plot is. So, like, Steve Coogan is married to, what is he married to?
Laura Linney.
Laura Linney. And his brother is Richard Gere, who is married to Rebecca Hall. And the dinner is one that Steve Coogan, who we definitely seems more like the major character, desperately does not want to go to. He's clearly not fond of his brother at all. He himself is a teacher. His brother is a rather successful politician.
Yeah, I think he's a congressman.
Yeah, congressman. And they're not even sure why they've been asked to go to this dinner. And as this goes along, they're getting ready for the dinner, going to the dinner. Coogan never stops bitching. You know, Laura Linney is this wife who's like, seems to be more like his handler than his wife. And that makes more sense as the movie goes along. And when it keeps being interrupted by these interstitial scenes of like two of their sons and something that was happening. And it's very jarring when they break in these scenes from that happened before.
Yeah. You mean the opening that is every teen comedy party ever in the 30-second like snippet?
Yeah.
That makes no sense for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. It's when you find out what the meeting is about, why Richard Gere wanted this dinner, that has something to do with something really horrific and inhuman that their sons did, or one of their sons did, and is basically like, I'm going to, there's only one way out of this, and is to be honest, and I'm going to renounce my candidacy. And the other couple is like, you can't do that because our sons' lives will be ruined forever. And it's an interesting idea, but boy, is it not fun to watch.
Yeah, so like, I agree with you. It's a good idea. Well, every character is despicable. Which, not the only movie we're going to be talking about this today who has that, but like none of them are even a little bit. And Steve Coogan, as you start to learn more about him, like there's a turn that happens halfway through the movie, which in almost any other movie, when that happens, you get a better understanding of who they are, and then you get it. Didn't get it, still hated him. And actually, this is the movie that made me realize I don't know if I even like him as an actor.
I like him in some things. He's not always the best guy for a part.
So here's the problem I had, though. And I actually looked up the book itself to see why they did this. And in the book, they do this where they talk about life, the universe, and everything in it, and they're beating around the bush, and you slowly learn how horrible these people are. And the thing is I've seen that 1,000 times.
And done so much better.
Yeah, the whole
Just to watch My Dinner with Andre, it's 1 billion times better.
The whole time I kept going, you know what would have been really cool? If 5 seconds in they went, this is what we're here to discuss.
Yeah.
And actually have a bold, honest conversation, because they touch on the idea of affluenza and rich people's kids doing horrible things and getting away with it. And it would have been so much cooler if that was what they decided to make the movie about. Here are these people. Here are them logically going, we can do this or we can do this. And what does it mean for our lives? And both, that's interesting to me.
It's not till almost the third act, though, that they even set that.
The last 15 minutes, basically, of the movie.
And the rest of it is just Steve Coogan being an intolerable dickhead.
Oh, God, horrible. Well, and then nobody else makes up for it. So he'll be a dick. And then as you learn more about the characters, it's just, oh, I thought that Laura Linney was a nice person and I liked her. Now she's just a dick too.
Yeah.
And that's what every character gets, except for, you're right, Richard Gere. He's the only one who isn't just an unrepentant, horrible human being.
Mm-hmm. And yet he gets shit on.
Kind of just drops at the
He gets shit on by everybody else the whole rest of the movie.
For being a good person.
I mean, I get there's a point to all this, but it still has to be the type of point that you find really interesting. And I didn't, and I had a horrible time actually watching it play out.
I really hated this.
This is just not fun. But some people did like it. It came to mixed reviews. There's audio commentary with the director and with Laura Linney and a photo gallery. That's about it. But I got to say, this is definitely a big skip it.
Actually, the commentary is why I looked up the book, because they were talking about it, and I was like, oh, well, I disagree. That's just not a good idea.
So our next film you didn't get to see, I did, because I knew that this was a Estonian entry for the best foreign language film at the last Academy Awards. It did not actually make a nomination, but I always try to when they're sending me something and I know it was that country's, they think it was their best film of the year. I'll be like, okay, well, that's probably worth seeing.
Let's be honest. I've never seen a film from Estonia. I think that sounds like a really interesting thing.
As far as I know, I hadn't either. I may have, though. Jesus Christ. I don't know how I would even figure it out. 1944 takes place in 1944 Germany. It is about the Soviet Union is advancing to try and capture Estonia from Germany, who had already occupied it at that point. And the film is kind of divided into two, as it's the Tannenberg Line in Estonia, and there's this unit of Estonian soldiers who are working with the Waffen-SS, who are fighting the Russians. And nobody really wants to be there, but they're scared to express that on any level, although there's certainly a lot of there's talk of people deserting and running away, like, this is fucked, what are we doing here? Neither side is appealing in this scenario, right? We don't want the Soviets here, we don't want the Germans here. In fact, they openly make fun of Nazi officials praising Hitler and stuff. Who gives them all signed pictures of Hitler, and they're like, oh, hooray. And it follows them to a certain point where it crosses just another character we meet up with. The movie goes, you know what? I think we're going to go with them instead, and just takes off and follows that character who's on the other side, on the Red Army. And it ends with kind of a, like, the second half is definitely better than the first half, where there's a whole thing where a guy who kills a soldier, like, without, like, one of those first guys he's killed, and he's just shocked. And it's another Estonian, which is part of the difficulty. Estonians fighting Estonians both fighting for causes they don't believe in because they had no choice. He, like, finds a letter to a girl, and he's like, well, okay, I'm going to deliver it. And then when he does, he can't bring himself to tell her, I'm the one who killed him. And it's the girl's, brother, not his lover, but they definitely have a connection, and the soldier's falling for her and she's falling for him. But then he's like, how is this going to work out? And that has an interesting wrap up. But ultimately, I thought even at 100 minutes, this was overlong. It definitely overstays its welcome significantly. And it's kind of a hard thing to have the movie suddenly switch gears and change to a completely different set of characters halfway through.
You have to really have them be connected, or you have to pull it off effectively well to do that.
Yeah. There are some nice effects and some nice war scenes. And overall, I do think this is worth watching for people who really love World War II films. And God knows there's a lot to choose from. And I think this is a worthy film to add to that list if that's something that you like a lot. But I don't think it's anything in particular that you should feel like you have to go seek out either.
Okay.
All right, the next one is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Someone would say horror comedy, perhaps even. That is Reanimator. I always want to say The Reanimator, but it's not. It's just Reanimator.
Okay, this was my surprise fave of the movies you gave me, and I've been calling it The Reanimator for the last week. I didn't know it was just Reanimator.
Yeah, I know. It's because it just sounds weird.
It's epic.
But it's just
The Reanimator.
It's just, but it's Reanimator, or called H.P. Lovecraft's Reanimator, depending on where you see it listed. This is very loosely based on a I believe, like a series of short stories by Lovecraft that were even out of print at the time. Somebody told director Stuart Gordon about them, who was thinking about doing a Frankenstein movie, and was like, oh, you know what you should do? So he had to go to a library and track down these stories, and then kind of fell in love with this character and made a story that very vaguely resembles the actual original stories.
So it's funny that you mentioned he was wanting to make a Frankenstein movie, because I was so woefully unprepared for Reanimator.
I can't believe you hadn't heard.
So I've heard about it. I've known about it, but way, way, way back in my formative years when you stole Playboys and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I found a Hustler magazine at a dear lease that had, of all things, a Reanimator themed photo shoot, which was about as pleasant as you can imagine. And I got it in my head that the movie was about a guy who decides to build his perfect girlfriend out of dead body parts.
Well, they have made that movie. It's called Frankenhooker.
So that's what I thought it was. And also, it made me not want to watch Reanimator.
Fair enough.
So I've circled this movie for the last 15 years of my life.
Not realizing that this is a real classic.
Oh my God, it was good.
Yeah.
I was not prepared at all. Well, first, it has, and I forget the actor's name.
Jeffrey Combs?
The Wayoon from Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, Jeffrey Combs. Well, who played, I believe, has the record for playing the most amount of characters on Star Trek. He's at something like 7 or 8 different characters he's played. It's ridiculous. He even played 2 different characters in the same episode once. Yeah, which makes him actually the third person to have done that. But, to be fair, Jonathan Frakes is one of them, and he was just playing his clone. So.
Jonathan Frakes.
Jeffrey Combs is great. He's kind of a legend. He's been in so many things, and this was his real, hey, everybody, it's Jeffrey Combs. Isn't he great? And we all kind of fell in love with him back when this movie came out in 1985 because of this, playing the crazed Dr. Herbert West, who has a reanimation formula that can bring the dead back to life, only not well.
Yeah, they're kind of upset.
Yeah, they're really, really, really rage
and,
filled.
The only problem I had with the movie at all was that I would have liked to see them trying to perfect it. The formula he had, because it seemed like it was, we brought back this person in the opening and his eyes exploded everywhere and he died horribly. So I'm going to use the same formula on something else, and that attacked me. And so I'm going to use the same formula.
Well, there are 2 sequels if you feel like following up what happens next.
I'm kind of intrigued. but yeah, I kept wanting to see him developing the formula and trying it.
It's like his whole thing. He basically kind of I don't know, I had the right word for it, but means his way into getting a room with Dan, who played by Bruce Abbott, and making him be his personal laboratory assistant here and doing all this. He kind of gets suckers into being part of all this.
Yeah, he kind of, it is, actually, you're right, means his way into it. Yeah. He's just a dick to him until he does what he wants.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, Dan has one of the most gorgeous women in the world at that period of time as his girlfriend, Barbara Crampton, who, just wait, you'll get what you're looking for. And then you'll be like, why did I wish for this? This is horrible. David Gale plays the sort of asshole head surgeon who has definitely constantly making dagger eyes back and forth at Herbert West, and eventually turns into one of the most memorable movie monsters of probably all time in this film.
Again, so that was when I kind of officially realized that I was not prepared for this movie when I went into it, was when he goes from being kind of the jerk college professor, because the setup of this movie feels like almost any college comedy setup, just there happens to be blood and gore in it.
Right.
And then he ends up being this homicidal, psychotic, chopped up into many parts villain. And kind of amazing.
Yeah, and let's say this movie will bring the phrase giving someone head a whole new meaning to you.
That's my favorite part.
Oh, yeah, it's everybody's favorite part. Because you're horrified and you're laughing at the same time.
And I've heard about that so much. That scene. So I knew that was coming. And I kept waiting, okay, this is going to happen. Oh, that's amazing. It's exactly what I wanted it to be. And it's horrible.
Yeah, I can't recommend this movie more. I mean, yes, it's very gory, to say the least. It's extremely violent. It's got as about full frontal nudity as you can get and still barely have manage to get an R rating. I believe it was even NC-17 at one point, and then they managed to get it down to an R. over time when things become more tame.
And also, I looked at it, and it's because there were 2 versions of the movie as well.
Yes, there are. Yeah, there's the R-rated version is the one almost everybody has seen, which is great. Now there was another version which is not on here, which was made for television and was strangely like 23 minutes longer.
I didn't know about that version.
Yeah, they cut out all the gore and like everything and the nudity, and they added 23 minutes of like whole new plot lines. Like there's a whole thing where David Gale's character, the asshole doctor, has like develop telepathic powers to mind control his victims. That's not in the other version at all. But it's like I said, it's a huge amount of extra stuff they filmed specifically to make up for all the running time they lost because they had to cut so much for TV. So somebody put together the integrated version, which is on here, where they kept all the good stuff that was cut out for the TV, but they added all the new TV scenes as well in a way that makes sense. Okay. So it all fits into there. So if you ever want to watch that. Now, that being said, Stuart Gordon himself has said repeatedly, yeah, I never was crazy about that added stuff. I still recommend the regular R-rated version. I did not get a chance to watch they call the integral version. I'll get to it at some point. I was too busy watching the really spectacular special features on this thing, as it's Arrow, and they never fuck around with what they put out on these. You get an isolated score. There's a new audio commentary with Stuart Gordon and actors Graham Skipper and Jesse Merlin from Reanimator the Musical, which I hadn't even realized was a thing before this set. There's the original audio commentaries that came with earlier versions of the disc with Stuart Gordon, one with Brian Usna, Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, Bruce Abbott, and Robert Sampson. There is a documentary, an hour and 8-minute documentary on the making of the film, 4 separate interviews, discussion about the music. There's a interview with Barbara Crampton. There is a look back at Stuart Gordon's stage origins and how he got started doing theater before this. There's a look at the Reanimator the Musical. There's 23 minutes of extended scenes, and I watched all of them. There's some good stuff in there. There is 2 minutes and 40 seconds of deleted scene. There's multi-angle storyboards that you can change around with angles. There is the original trailer. You can get the screenplay, which is really, I love it when they make that an option. You download the screenplay to your computer.
I've seen that.
There's a wonderful thing on here. It's almost an hour long, a guide to Lovecraftian cinema, which is this guy Chris Lackey, who runs a Lovecraft podcast, and he goes through all the films that have been influenced heavily or based specifically off of a Lovecraft story or book, and just gives them to you in order of what they were and talks a little about them, and it's really cool. And then there is an audio supplement featuring Jeffrey Combs reading Lovecraft's original short story, Herbert West Reanimator.
Can I just say that I have a hard time imagining this movie ever looking or sounding as good as it did in the unrated version too. Like, I know this is Arrow and that's what they do.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was floored by how gorgeous it was.
It really is. They did not mess around whatsoever with this release, because this is a deeply beloved film. People really like this movie, and I'm one of them. I remember seeing this in high school and just going, I want to own this movie. This is one of my movies that's like they say your white album. Every time there's a new version, you go pick up whatever it is. This one's slightly better. It's infinitesimally better, but I gotta buy it.
Well, count me among that list of people as well now.
This is, I think, both of our pick of the week then.
Yeah, definitely mine.
For sure. All right, so let's move on. Another one you didn't get to see. This is a weird one. It's called Union Furnace, and I will tell you that 20 minutes into this film, I literally just gave up on it. I was like, okay, this is horrible. This is such indie, the acting's okay, but it's so super low budget. Nothing is happening that's interesting. I don't know who even sent this to me. And I stumbled across a review of it online that was like, stick with it, it gets better. I was like, all right, fine. So I went back to, in fact, to watch the rest of this. Union Furnace, the film's title, is a real name of a small township in Ohio. Everybody's very poor and struggling to try and get their lives together and take care of their families. And then this guy, who's one of the producers of the film, Seth Hammond, shows up, who's like meeting with the our protagonist character, who's, just a redneck basically, in the town, saying, "Hey, you look like a good guy." They're like, "Go out drinking and stuff." And he's like, "I tell you what, I got a gambling opportunity for you where you can win a lot of money." And you're like, "Okay, what's going on here?" So he ends up, they put the old bag on his head and take him to an undisclosed location where there's quite a few other people in there, eight people, total, including that main character of Cody, who all have had numbers spray painted on their clothes. And basically there's a group of people all wearing like crazy masks who are all betting on whether or not they will succeed at doing various tasks. And at first it's literally they're just playing board games. It's like whoever's the ultimate loser is out, and, they don't know what happened to him at the end. Like, oh, he's just gone. But every time, like, there's a break room where a guy in a pig mask is sitting there quiet with a shotgun just to make sure nothing goes wrong. But everybody has a metal box with their number on it and a key to it. So they unlock it, and every time there's more and more and more money in it. So the idea is whoever gets to the end ends up getting everything.
Okay.
Right? And these characters, they vary in how interesting they are. You're like, okay, there's only one that's an outrageous asshole that you just want to die. And hey, guess what? He dies. But like, I'm more interested along the way in the guy who's actually Lion, the guy wearing the lion mask, who's the guy who met Cody, who introduced him to this deal and seems to be the guy running it. They give you just enough for you to want to know more, but then you never get enough for it to have been worthwhile to sit through it. Plus, the games themselves aren't that interesting. Thank God we've got Keith David here, who's must be slumming it for a check because this is so low budget. But he earns his check. They give him something to do.
That's because he's Keith David.
He's awesome.
He's never bad.
But by the end, I was like, that was okay. I get it. The whole thing is a so incredibly on the nose thing about about desperation and poor towns and economy issues and how like the rich fuck over the poor. It's just at points so on the nose. You're like, oh, come on, guys. I get what you're trying to do here. I admire it to some degree, but who's going to watch this movie?
So the big question, was it worth going back and finishing?
Not with all maybe if I was somebody who was like, didn't have to watch 30 movies a week. From my point of view, I was like, it's okay, I guess. Overall, I was like, I'd probably skip it.
Uh-huh.
Next up, we have another Arrow release and they love to do this kind of, like, Arrow loves horror movies, and sometimes you get the Reanimators, and sometimes you get The Slayer, which unfortunately is not about Buffy. I was very disappointed to find out that.
Yeah, you told me that when you handed the movies off, and when I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to watch The Slayer. It has nothing to do with Buffy.
Yeah.
I really wish it did, though.
Oh, God.
It would have been so much better.
Originally, apparently called Nightmare Island. This came out in 1982, and it's, two vacationing couples on a small sort of northeastern island, that is kind of burnt out.
Yeah, there was an old World War II base on it, I think.
Yeah, and several houses that are just kind of burned down, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? How is this a vacation town?
And then they go to the quintessential horror cabin that is actually kind of cheesy but nice on the inside.
Yeah. And there's a lot of the main character keeps having prophetic dreams of her friends dying, in which, of course, the movie's called The Slayer. Her friends are going to die. And the question is, well, in her dreams, though, it's not like a slasher killer. It's a demonic monster that's killing people. And as things go along and things in her dreams start actually happening, she starts wondering, is there really some kind of demonic monster? And it's a little confusing, especially when it gets to the very what the fuck just happened ending of this film. Because the movie, in every other way except for those dream sequences, feels like a very traditional slasher film. No one's very young, which is weird, because usually in these type of films, they're all 17.
Instead, no, they're two married couples in their 30s.
Yeah, in their late 30s, it looks like.
Who, by the way, I very much like The Dinner. I hated almost every single character in this movie.
Yeah, there's nothing to like about him. Well, except for the redheaded main character
who's just kind of goofy and losing her mind. And
she's hot.
I loved the dream sequences, and admittedly the kills were kind of interesting, but
actually that's the one thing I did like about it. The kills were very creative and surprisingly gory.
Yeah. But then it gets to the ending, which I've seen this movie, and I can now with some authority say I don't actually know if the killer was supernatural or not.
Yeah, the law of movie conservation as it applies to horror movies means, like, obviously someone we've met in this film is the killer.
Yeah.
And there's a point you realize, well, it clearly can only be one person because we've only met one other character.
And then the very end of the movie, which is so nonsensical and out of nowhere, and just, it's such an attempt to be arty and clever, and just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
It was one of 2 movies I saw that I audibly went, what?
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, because I just, like, no, that's not how you end it. Wait, that's really the ending of the movie?
I don't. Oh. It gets really like, what are you saying that happened here?
I'll say, and I think I got that, but why? I just don't get it.
There's even a whole thing, and maybe I missed something earlier, like the very, 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 very end, which isn't really a spoiler because you won't have any clue what this means, is like the main character is a little girl and her dad gives her a cat, and she looks at the cat and freaks out, and that's the end of the movie. I was like, why is the cat freaking her out?
Oh, God, I actually know.
Oh, do you? Okay,
yeah.
Because I couldn't figure it out.
So earlier in the movie, when it suddenly becomes Nightmare on Elm Street and she doesn't want to sleep at all, when her brother drugs her, which, by the way, oh my God, her brother basically date rapes her without the rape. It's terrible. But he talks about they gave her a cat, and she used to have dreams, and then they found the cat in the freezer, and on and on and on. And
so
all
what does that mean, though?
So I think it's all a dream, but it's all the dream of her as the 6-year-old. And then when she sees the cat, she realizes all of this stuff is going to happen.
Well, points for trying, but it didn't really sell.
Terrible.
Bad. Yeah. However, this has definitely been a long sought-after film for big fans of the slasher genre. It's been missing for a long time and no available copies of it. So Arrow, of course, putting it out to fix it up all nice. There's a 52.5-minute retrospective with lots of interviews with everyone involved called Nightmare Island, the making of the Slayer. There's a 13-minute return to Tybee, the locations of the Slayer. Like, yeah, okay, great. Let's see what they look like.
I made it like 15 minutes into the documentary.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Yeah. And then I realized it was for the Slayer, and I just didn't care anymore.
I got about 5 minutes in, and then I went, why am I watching this? Yeah. I don't care about this movie. There was a bit called the Tybee Post-Theater Experience, where there was a screening of the film with an audience with introductions by people in a post-film Q&A. And then a still gallery, and there's some audio commentary bits, isolated score. So, it's a nice package for a film that I'll never watch again.
I will say, fun fact, it's one of the movies that shows that not everything should necessarily be Blu-ray. Yeah. Because in the opening dream sequence, when the beast hand reaches out to get her from behind, you can clearly see the burly, hairy arm of the grip with his jean shirt rolled up above the elbows.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not a perfect film, to put it mildly. All right, let's go to our next one, which is actually a big Hollywood release that I did not see when it played in theaters, because I saw the trailer and was like, I am not watching a military feel-good film about a dog.
And even the flippin' DVD menu, or the Blu-ray menu, is 9/10 an American flag waving, and then in the bottom lower right, like 5 inches, you can see her and her dog in the waving of the flag.
I just generally don't watch big Hollywood films where dogs are a central character, because you're like, that never ends well. You're just going to try and make me cry, and I won't have it.
It's either going to be the dog almost always dies, or it's going to be so rah-rah, sis-boom-bah, feel good that it's not really an entertaining movie aside from the fact that it makes you feel good about being an American.
Now, all that being said, Megan Levy managed to straddle a middle line reasonably well, I thought.
I actually really enjoyed it.
It's another one of those films, I think it's better than Going in Style, mind you. Considerably better film. But it's one of those films I can't see going back to again. But I was like, there's nothing wrong with this film. I would recommend it to other people. It's nice. It's weird to see Tom Felton playing a complete good guy. I was like, wait a minute, that's Tom Felton. What the fuck is he doing? He's not even snarling at anyone.
No, because after Malfoy, he's been such a dick in everything he's in. I kept waiting for him to be a jerk, and then
even when he plays a good guy, like in The Flash, he's still kind of a jerk. Yeah. And here he's like, I'm a great guy. The story here is a real biographical story of the titular lead character, Megan Levy, played here by Kate Mara, who was a U.S. Marine corporal who, when she basically had a lot of problems, like, she appears to me, and I don't know the real story, but at least is the way she's represented in this film, she appears like she's probably deals with manic depression, maybe bipolar, something like that. Like, she's just drops out of life, can't really handle anything, can't handle people, is not good with the relationships. And she decides, she just goes, I'm joining the military, bye! And goes to join the military, leaving her mom, Edie Falco, and her father, Bradley Whitford, they're separated. Just like, what the fuck just happened? But she gets there and she sees Common, who is plays Gunnery Sergeant Massey, who runs the military police K-9 department. She's like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to play with the doggies.
It's because it was Common. I mean,
plus it's Common. He's awesome. He's not as common as his name would imply. And she, after like finding something that motivates her, she just, really basically realizes, okay, I'm going to work really hard so I can get this. And she does. And she forms a very close relationship with a dog that no one else can get close to. And the dogs are bomb sniffers. So there's a good part of the movie where they get deployed into Fallujah and they're sniffing out bombs. Which actually gets pretty exciting and tense.
I was going to say that the mission that kind of the whole movie revolves around and that whole sequence was really good. It reminded me, it actually made me, well, I appreciated the movie. It made me wish that we got and I'm blanking on the title of it, The Hurt Locker, but with like the Megan Levy and character and her dog going through going through mission after mission after mission and seeing all the crazy stuff that happens over there.
That was my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah,
for sure. It's really interesting. It's really tense. It's really good performance by everyone involved. And then the third act is really her, going, well, I don't want to be in the military forever. I'm kind of done here. And then realizing, what do you mean I can't take the dog with me? Where I kind of lost sympathy for her at that point. I was like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. It's like, they're like, look, these dogs, they pretty much get the dog version of PTSD. When we have tried in the past to let people take them into a regular domestic setting, they attack people.
Well, and they even touch on that. Like, flat out, Common has a bit where he says,
that's what I'm saying.
No, I've seen this happen.
Yeah, and of course it does. And I'm kind of like, I get that you bonded with this dog. Get another dog. I just kind of was like, what are you going to do? Come to the base and fucking move near the base so you can go visit the dog. I get some degree of the emotional thing, but her, which is what made her famous, her going to basically her congressman, like, we need to do something about this because I should be able to be with my dog. I was like, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just having trouble sympathizing at this point.
So, I think I ended up liking it a bit more than you, but I think the reason for that, though, is I got about maybe 2/3 of the way through. It was actually right around that time she had the conversation with Common. And I stopped looking at this as a military movie, despite all the marketing, despite the flag waving.
It's not really a military movie.
It's a movie about a girl who went through a traumatic event, which you don't find out what it was that caused her to break until the last third of the movie, when she finally tells her boyfriend. I was like, okay, this is about a girl who she broke with reality and then happened to go into the military and found herself through the dog.
Right.
And so when I viewed it that way, it became more interesting and it became something that I was able to connect with her a little bit. She still, they had very good reasons for not wanting to give the dog, but at the very least I understood where she was coming from.
I understood where she was coming from, but it felt like, especially after that Common speech to her, it was like, so don't you get it?
Yeah.
This is dangerous and this is why you can't do it. That's a very valid reason. And that she's like even more determined. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes.
Which, the biggest issue I had with it was that, one, I get that she had this emotional shift where all of a sudden she wants to be a dog trainer. I didn't see that. Like, when it happened, I was like, oh, I guess she's going to do this now. And
right.
It felt like just like her deciding to be in the military where she just did it. And I would have really liked to see more of her trying to show that this dog was a special circumstance. Like, more justification so we weren't sitting back going, lady, your dog is going to tear some kid's head off by accident. Instead, no, this is a sweet dog. But then again, it's based on a true story. You get what you get, unfortunately.
I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm any more sympathetic towards the real people either. But then again, we're only getting a tiny piece of the bigger story.
Exactly.
Here. This is a very thin slice of this woman's life. And as it only has the one supplement, which is 2.5 minutes long, which takes a look at basically just stuff that we already know by watching the film of the main character.
It was an EPK.
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason to watch it. I would have been interested to see a full-on interview with the real Megan, but
I agree. I would have liked to know more about what really happened versus the Hollywood version of it. That would have been fun.
Agreed. Well, let's go on to our last title, which is, of course, the controversial fan hit and hated Batman and Harley Quinn. Now, this is, of course, co-written by Bruce Timm, who was one of the main creators of the original Batman, the animated series that fucking changed everything, for sure. Was definitely one of those high marks in, like, superhero stuff for making them, hey, we can make lots of money off this by the studios. Well, let's do more of it. And is definitely still beloved as one of the greatest animated shows ever. Bruce Timm has said, although DC has not commented on it, that as far as he's concerned, takes place in that animated universe.
So let me get this out of the way first. I loved the holy hell out of this movie.
I did too.
But, oh my God, tonally, I was so confused by it.
It's definitely... because there were pretty much straight up comedy episodes of that show. Yeah. And this is a straight up comedy episode. It's completely playing it for laughs. I mean, there's even, I laughed out loud at one point when Harley Quinn is in the back of the Batmobile with Nightwing and Robin in the front. And she's just, I can't remember what she was doing. She was babbling about something and Batman's just like, why did I quit medical school?
Okay. I thought you were going to talk about the fart joke in that, which was the only time I went, oh, come on.
Even that made me laugh when Nightwing is like, Batman, seriously pull the car over.
Also, in the beginning, it's so serious, and it's very much like an episode of Batman the Animated Series. Mm-hmm. The art style is the same, which I'm totally
It's the same Batmobile, exactly.
Yep. And I fully admit that this is a nitpick. It kind of weirded me out and bothered me a bit, the fact that Batman and Nightwing are just officially sanctioned law officers. Nightwing is canvassing and interviewing witnesses and just walking the streets in full get-up. And Batman, walks into a super secret government facility and is ordering agents around.
Well, that was kind of the deal in the animated series. Yeah, they were basically there was never, except for things where, I think there was a two-parter once where they were framed for something and everybody was after them. But
I admit that's a nitpick, but from probably after the first third, when the movie just goes full Batman 66.
Oh, totally.
And they go to a henchman bar and they're going through, and the whole time they're at the henchman bar, I'm like, God, this feels like Batman 66. Am I crazy?
It feels a lot like the recent animated Batman 66 movie they did. It's that same type of humor.
And I knew they were doing a sequel to that, so I was like, is this the sequel to that? No. I'm not sure. And
all I can say is Harley Quinn gets up on stage and does karaoke of a Blondie song, which I was like, I've lived my whole life waiting to see this.
Well, and then when they do the inevitable Batman 66 fight with words flying at the screen, and they do "Ow, my balls."
Yeah,
officially one of my favorite Batman movies. Just yes, I love it. This is amazing.
I get why some people were like, I think this is really stupid. It's supposed to be really stupid. Yeah. It's not like you're like, I don't understand how this fits in with The Dark Knight Returns in the canon. Well, obviously it doesn't.
It doesn't fit in with anything.
It doesn't fit in with anything except possibly the original animated series, you know. And it's the bad guys are Poison Ivy and the Floronic Man, who's basically evil Swamp Thing, who've teamed up. Which, speaking of course, Swamp Thing does make an appearance because you've got the two plant-based bad guys. And it's a wonderful sequence where they're all like, he's a Deus Ex Machina. And then he just pretty much does the God equivalent of a shrug and takes off.
Yeah, this is the other movie that at the end I went, wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh.
It is a weird ending. And you have to stick around to a post-credit sequence on this.
Yes.
That is so funny. It's probably the funniest bit in the whole thing, featuring Harley with her new job. But Kevin Conroy, of course, voicing Batman, because if you're doing something with Batman the Animated Series like this, it's pretty much got to be him. And I know a lot of people were really disappointed that the original voice actress for Harley Quinn was not available, apparently. And so they got Melissa Rauch. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that the best, who's known as Dr. Bernadette on Big Bang Theory. Maybe that alone is why geeks were like, fuck everything to do with Big Bang Theory.
Probably, because that's true. I mean, that attitude is out there, but I kind of liked her. I thought she did a great job.
I thought she was fine. I didn't really sure, I loved the original voice actress, but I didn't think she was bad at it either. So
I didn't look up who was in it. I spent about 3 seconds when she came on going, oh, wait, is that the original? No, I don't think that's the original. She's fine. She's good.
There's, by the way, a great bit where they're like thinking maybe they need backup, so they call the Justice League satellite. And Booster Gold is the one talking to him, voiced, by the way, by Bruce Timm himself. They're like, who's available? And they're just listing off all these D-list heroes. They're like, no, ooh. And like making little snarky comments about them. And then Booster Gold's like, hey guys, I can totally come. It's like, no, seriously, we're fine. I thought that was pretty fucking funny.
No, I laughed out loud. Like, honestly, the only joke in the entire movie that didn't land for me was the fart joke.
And it was a little like, really? You're going to do that blatant of a fart joke?
And you're right in that the follow-up jokes about the fart were funny.
Yeah, but the initial was like, seriously?
A fart joke?
I don't know. I once again totally get why this would not be somebody's cup of tea, but for me, I thought it was a real riot. By the way, there's all sequences in the karaoke thing with these two twin henchmen that turns into a blowjob joke that I don't know if everybody saw.
I didn't catch that at all.
Yeah, there's a whole thing with the Harley's up on stage with them and she's on her knees in front of them and the mic, the way it's sticking out is like right at her mouth and her mouth is open and it's coming right out from his groin. And I was like, that's a visual blowjob joke, guys.
I kind of want to watch that.
Plus they're like incestuous twins. It's twincest going on between these guys.
I caught.
It's fucking weird. This is a weird movie.
Yeah, it is.
But I think I found it a lot of fun if you don't take it too seriously. Of course, there's a sneak peek at the next one, Gotham by Gaslight, which I'm super looking forward to.
Same here. It looked really interesting.
There's a 21-minute look at the character's history in the comic books of and the animated series of Harley Quinn with Bruce Timm and Paul Dini. There's a look at Lauren Lester, the voice actor who does Nightwing. And then there's all the, it's been irritating lately. They've been filling up a lot of the extra space with a sneak peek at, you're like, movies that came out 3 years ago. Yeah. Why are you putting these on here? I guess this is the 30th DC animated universe original movie. So, and there's two old, Batman the Animated Series episodes on here as well. Harley and Ivy and Harley's Holiday, so.
Like, I should kind of say, I watched the Harley and Ivy because I love anytime Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy are together. And like, my biggest complaint that isn't a complaint at all about this movie is, I kind of just want a movie about Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy having an adventure.
Oh, totally.
That would be so awesome.
Yeah, that's why, like, when they're talking about doing the Harley and the Joker movie, I was like, no. We want to see Harley and Poison Ivy movie. Harley, Poison Ivy, and Catwoman, ideally.
Yes.
I mean, let's just do, what do they call it? Birds of Prey. Like, let's see that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, completely. Anyway, that is it for our show. Thank you so much for listening. Aaron, thank you so much for being here with me.
Glad to be here.
Hopefully you can come do future episodes with me as well. I can keep definitely. It. I didn't throw you off. I didn't intimidate you with the stack.
No. Yeah, actually, it was smaller than I was expecting. Okay. I was expecting it to be a larger
I try to keep respectfully sized stacks.
And thankfully, I have plenty of time every evening, and I enjoy weird, batshit insane movies.
You
did not disappoint.
Fair enough. That's one of the reasons we've added a bunch of new people to Digital Noise is because I know it was difficult for some of these guys when I handed them 14 movies and go, you have a week and a half. So more people means smaller stacks for everyone.
Well, and I admit, like, week to week 14?
Yeah.
Once a month? Yeah, I'll watch 14 movies in a week. I can handle that.
Well, you won't have to, is what I'm saying. Anyway, yes, please become a subscriber once again. Oh my God, it helps so much. We love you. I will send you a personal note of love if you become a subscriber. I'll write you a poem. And,
now's the time I want to tell the audience that I'm a subscriber.
Yeah, there you go. He's a subscriber. He's on the show. He's working for me. And he's even still a subscriber.
And I'm just saying I want the poem.
You want these stuff? No, you already subscribed. That ship has sailed.
Oneofus.net has been your one-stop shop for all things geek for years. But there's a side to them many of you have never heard. The subscription side. Subscribe and listen to great podcasts like The Breakfast Pub, The Original Gentleman, and the Watch a Movie With Us series. Head on over to Oneofus.net and don't forget your towel.